Okay, just give me a minute. I'm casting the screen and then we'll start. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, I think yesterday we were speaking, or rather in the last lecture, we were speaking about the prion-based infection. And today we will be moving ahead to understand one more concept, which is about Staphylococcus aureus. Let me tell you that in any dairy farm, S. aureus is a big time threat. Okay, because S. aureus is known to be responsible for causing a havoc in the form of mastitis. Mastitis is the infection of the mammary gland, the bladder region of, not the bladder, rather the udder region of the cows. And let me tell you that majority of economic losses that take place in a dairy farm is because of mastitis. And you will see that 25% of mammary gland infection is caused by Staph aureus in cows. Okay, and these infections are highly contagious, and also unfortunately, even after giving antibiotics, you will see that the infection recurs, which means that the infection is very difficult to tackle, as even after the therapeutic strategy, it may happen that it happens again. And unfortunately, it spreads at such a fast rate that within no time, you will see that the entire herd that you are having in the dairy farm is going to be infected. Also, the yield that you get of milk from these cows is significantly lowered. Currently, just in United States, you will see that there is a annual loss of around $2 billion because of outbreak of mastitis, which is caused by S. aureus. Now, S. aureus is not just a pathogen difficult to deal with in case of infection of cows. S. aureus, which is a commensal that is normally found on human body, on human skin especially. Let me tell you, it's a problem even for humans. Till the time it's on our skin, everything is good, fine, stable. But the moment it finds its way via the skin into our system, the disaster begins. Okay, especially when it reaches our bloodstream, it can cause a condition which is called as the toxic shock syndrome. And the problem is that S. aureus becomes resistant to antibiotics at a very fast rate. So the family of penicillin, its derivatives, all have turned out to be useless eventually because of the resistance that S. aureus develops. You would be knowing that currently methicillin and vancomycin, these are the strains that are being preferred to deal with S. aureus, and we already have MRSA and VRSA strains, which are methicillin resistant S. aureus and vancomycin resistant S. aureus. So that tells us how difficult it is to control the infection which is caused by Staphylococcus aureus. Now, let me tell you that the solution that has been suggested for this via transgenesis is to create transgenic cows which secrete an agent which is staphylolytic. The name itself tells you staphylolytic stands for lysing the staphylococcal cells, breaking them open. Okay? Now, this will help you to prevent the infection that is produced by Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus simulans produces lysostaphin. Okay, this is a peptidoglycan hydrolase that specifically attacks the cell wall of S. aureus. सो उसी के जिनस का एक दूसरा स्पीशीज स्टेफाइलोकोकस ऑरियस को मारने के लिए ये एंजाइम सिक्रीट करता है जिसका नाम है लाइजोस्टेफिन, जो कि एक पेप्टिडोग्लाइकन हाइड्रोलेज है which specifically goes and acts on the cell wall of Staphylococcus aureus. However, when cultured eukaryotic cells were initially transfected with this lysostaphin gene, it was seen that an inactive lysostaphin was produced, okay, because two asparagine residues in this lysostaphin were glycosylated. So ये lysostaphin का कोई फायदा ही नहीं था because it was not able to act effectively. So this problem was overcome by using in vitro mutagenesis to replace the codons for these two asparagine residues with those for glutamine. So दोनों asparagine को हटाकर वहां पर glutamine डाल दिया गया और ये modified lysostaphin was not glycosylated after synthesis in eukaryotic cells, and it was fully active against S. aureus. So this also shows that कई बार native gene के इस्तेमाल करने से तुमको active product मिलेगा ये जरूरी नहीं है, क्योंकि यूकैरियोटिक सिस्टम में उस प्रोटीन के एक्सप्रेशन के बाद उसमें क्या चेंजेस होते हैं ये भी मैटर करता है टू डिसाइड वेदर दैट प्रोडक्ट विल बी इन अ एक्टिव स्टेट और इन एन इनएक्टिव स्टेट. Now, the efficacy of this approach was first tested by engineering mice. Obviously, directly cows engineer करने से पहले mice engineer किया जाएगा, so that they express the altered lysostaphin gene under the control of promoter of sheep beta lactoglobulin, which is secreted into milk. Now, once it was proven that it protects the transgenic mice against a very large inocula or dosage of S. aureus, then they extended this approach to produce cows which can express the lysostaphin gene. Now, the altered lysostaphin gene was kept under the control of ovine beta lactoglobulin promoter, okay, such that it will be, once you introduce it in the cow fibroblast, if it is under this promoter, it is going to be produced only in those cells, that is the cells of mammary gland, where this promoter can work effectively, because you have kept it under ovine beta lactoglobulin promoter. So it works only in the mammary gland cells. Okay. So the nuclei from these cells were transferred to enucleated oocytes and activated, जैसे normal transgenic animal बनाने का process है. Blastocyst was implanted into uterus of cows and several calves were subsequently born and they were used to establish the transgenic lines. Now, after 9 infusions of S. aureus, मतलब 9 बार तुमने S. aureus introduce किया into the mammary glands of high lysostaphin expressing cows, no infection was observed. Now, 9 times infusion is a very high dosage. So that clearly indicates that the process has been successful, right? And, this is something which is very effectively working against mastitis caused by S. aureus. But the same thing when was done on non-transgenic animals, it was seen that 71% of the non-transgenic animals got infected. So it's a good control that has been maintained. Okay. Now, even low levels of lysostaphin expression gave a significant level of protection. So even if it's not getting expressed at high levels, it's still okay. Right? So this shows a promise that how in beef and dairy industries you could actually deal with these issues of pathogens and infectious agents effectively. But yes, there are a lot of questions that are being raised, that how safe will it be if the milk contains lysostaphin and that is consumed by people like us, or if similar kind of proteins are expressed in milk, what is going to be the consequence of consumption of such milk by the consumers? So that is a question that is yet to be answered. So this is to indicate what modification was done, wherein you can see that initially the asparagine residues used to get glycosylated, and when it was modified and replaced with glutamine, you can see that the active version of altered lysostaphin works effectively, right? Now, another aim is improving the milk quality. So one of the goals of transgenesis in dairy cattle is to improve the nutritional value of milk for humans and also for the suckling animals. The major set of nutrients in milk are proteins, fat, and the carbohydrate, which is lactose. Overexpression of proteins involved in the production of milk nutrients, for example, can be beneficial for growth, health, and survival of suckling animals. So people started thinking, what if we create transgenic strains such that we can express specific nutrients in excess in the milk, and that will be beneficial for the human consumers as well. Now, also, and another aspect is associated to this. The amount of cheese that you can make from milk depends on, or it is directly proportional to the amount of beta casein and kappa casein content which is present in the milk. An increase in beta casein content reduces the time which is required for protein coagulation and whey removal, which is normally a very elaborate process in cheese making. And that helps you to get the desirable result of having firm chunks of curd which is processed into cheese at a later point of time. Now, increasing the production of these proteins in milk was achieved in cows which were engineered such that they harbor additional copies of the beta and kappa casein genes, so that they produce more of these proteins in their milk. Also, you can modify the animals and create transgenic cows which express other milk nutrients. Okay. And also, what is very important is that you should check that when you increase the concentration of one nutrient in milk, is it affecting the other nutrients which may be present? So you have to understand that even with increase in beta and kappa casein in milk, the other nutrients of milk were largely unaffected. So the vitamin content, the mineral content, the amino acid content, fatty acid content, antibody content were very similar to how it was in the non-transgenic animals. So ऐसा नहीं है कि बढ़ा दिया तो बाकी किसी न्यूट्रिएंट का कंटेंट कम ज्यादा हो रहा है, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होता. The rest of the content will remain as it is, it will remain the same. The cheese which was manufactured by transgenic, from this transgenic milk, it surely had higher concentration of some amino acids, which obviously increased its nutritional value. And comparatively, it was easier to eliminate fat from it and keep a lower fat content, which is always preferable. When you look at cheese products, people always would prefer that it is more of proteins and less of fat. Also, modification of lactose content of milk would be something which would be very, very beneficial for people who suffer from lactose intolerance. Now, lactose intolerant condition is seen in those individuals who cannot produce lactose hydrolyzing enzyme by themselves, which is called as lactase. So in all healthy individuals in normal conditions, you will see that the pancreatic cells are going to secrete lactase, which is an enzyme required to hydrolyze lactose to its monosaccharide level, which is glucose and galactose. Now, in some individuals, they are deficient in lactase because their system is not able to synthesize lactase effectively. So then lactose accumulates in them, it is not metabolized in them, it increases to toxic concentrations and they start showing allergic symptoms. In some cases, the condition is even fatal. So these individuals cannot consume milk and milk-based products because they do not have the ability to digest lactose. So lactose intolerant individuals experience severe indigestion after consumption of milk or milk containing food. So let us say if we start expressing the mammalian lactase gene in the mammary gland, that could reduce the lactose content because it will break the inherent lactose present in the milk already into monosaccharides. Okay. And you cannot obviously delete out all the lactose because some lactose is required for effective milk secretion. So Some transgenic mice were created wherein 50 to 85% of reduction in milk lactose content was brought about. So if you keep the lactose content low, that is manageable for these individuals. Also, many people who are allergic to bovine milk would benefit from the abolition of beta lactoglobulin, which is a major allergen in the milk. So that can also be done by transgenic approach, that you eliminate that allergen completely from the milk. The feasibility of this approach is not yet demonstrated in cows. All this has been tried in mice because creation of knockout mutants by inserting a selectable marker in protein coding sequence is found to be very inefficient in livestock animals than it is in mice. So it is still to be expanded into the livestock. It has been just tried out in mice. But right now, for lactose intolerant people, you will see that they are administered externally the enzyme in the form of a capsule. So the physician would prescribe them lactase enzyme capsules, which they have to consume once in a day, and then they can have milk and milk-based products because they have supplemented their system with lactose breaking, lactose digesting enzyme. So, as I said that, there is inefficiency of this approach in livestock animals. That is due to low frequency of homologous recombination that takes place in the cells of these animals. So eventually, maybe if, people find solutions to this approach and this, what you say, challenge, then probably this can be extended to even the livestock. Now, improving the animal production traits, especially this is going to be very beneficial for people who domesticate animals for the purpose of meat. So, improving the production traits such as muscle mass in meat animals is considered to be, more difficult than engineering animals to express a foreign gene in milk, because it's not a single gene that's going to bring about an increase in muscle mass. There are going to be multiple genes which are involved in controlling growth, body composition. And to do this kind of transgenesis, a detailed understanding of the genetic basis for that particular trait, like increase in muscle mass, has to be known. So I should be having complete understanding of what all are the different kinds of genes that are involved in the growth of muscle mass. That has to be understood before I plan to create a transgenesis model. So initially, the researchers, what they used to do was to increase the body mass of livestock. They used to introduce genes which used to encode for growth hormones or insulin-like growth factor. And these early efforts have yielded animals with increased ability to convert all nutrients into body weight. So whatever they consume, they try to convert it into body mass. But ultimately, there were difficulties in controlling the expression of these transgenes, which was leading to disastrous conditions in these animals, because overproduction of growth hormone could affect the animal's health due to ulceration in the gastric tissue, malfunctioning of kidney. There could be lameness that is basically seen. Okay, so can anyone tell me what is lameness in terms of animals? Anyone? So lameness is basically, a condition wherein the cow feels lethargic because of lesions which are caused in them. Okay, inflammation of lining of heart, immobility of joints, susceptibility to pneumonia, all this could happen. Many of these, why do they happen when there is excessive growth hormone which is administered in them, is still unknown. So to overcome these problems, inducible promoters were used such that the transgene will be expressed only when it is induced. So promoters like metallothionein promoter, which can be activated by zinc, which can be administered in animals' diet. was used, but still the expression was not that great because the transgene was incorporated into heterochromatin, which are those regions of the genome which are not regularly transcribed. We call them as transcriptionally silent regions because they are not transcribed very often. Now, some cattle breeds, such as the Belgian Blue, have larger and leaner muscle mass than other breeds because of naturally occurring mutations in the gene which encodes myostatin, a growth factor that normally inhibits the growth of skeletal muscle. Now, interestingly, humans with rare mutations that disrupt the function of myostatin are unusually muscular. And dogs of the Whippet breed that have enhanced muscle mass, known as double muscling, and increased racing speed also carry mutation in both copies of myostatin. So people thought that the mutations result in production of a truncated and non-functional myostatin protein. So people started thinking, can we use this in our transgenesis approach such that we get larger and leaner muscle mass? So we should know what mutation should be done to disrupt the myostatin function such that the meat production can be increased. However, if the disruption could be limited to male animals, the milk production in females would be unaffected because this could affect, if you do it in females, this could affect their milk production also. So the feasibility of this approach was demonstrated in mice where a myostatin inactivator was targeted to Y chromosome, such that this would be expressed only in male animals and not in females. See how they are having a very targeted approach such that this happens only in a specific gender, so that the other properties, the other traits remain unaffected, right? So the myostatin inactivator consists of N-terminal propeptide domain. We call it as latency associated peptide or LAP of the myostatin protein. Following proteolytic cleavage, the N-terminal propeptide can hold the C-terminal portion of the protein, which is the biological active component. Okay. So once it holds that C-terminal, it converts that protein into an inactive state. So let us see it in the image and try and understand. So this is your propeptide domain and this is the active domain. Okay. This inactive complex is going to be in such a way that the active domain is held in position by the inactive part of the complex or this peptide domain. So you don't allow this domain to be set free. If it is set free, then this will be an active myostatin. But if it remains attached over here, it will remain in the inactive state. Okay. So you can make it stick there and block the myostatin activity, which would lead to inhibition of muscle growth, and the mass rather would be increased. So a two-step strategy was used to target the gene which encodes the myostatin inactivator to the mouse Y chromosome. So in the first step, a cassette containing positive and negative selectable markers were flanked by LOXP site was inserted into a non-essential region of Y chromosome of mouse embryonic stem cells by homologous recombination. So first thing that they have done is they have inserted positive and negative selectable markers, which is the NEO and TK. So homologous recombination kiya hua hai, and with the LOXP sites, they have inserted these selectable markers into the Y chromosome. The transformed cells were selected by resistance to the antibiotic resistance, which is conferred by the NEO gene. We have discussed about NEO gene in the earlier examples also. Okay, and the integration site was also confirmed by performing a PCR. In the second step, a gene encoding myostatin inactivator under the control of a strong rat skeletal muscle promoter and enhancer, also flanked by LOXP site, was cloned into a plasmid and introduced by electroporation into the transfected embryonic stem cells. So जिन stem cells में अभी marker present है, उसमें अब हम एक प्लाज्मिड इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं बाय इलेक्ट्रोपोरेशन प्रोसेस. This plasmid is going to contain the myostatin inactivator gene and enhancer under a strong promoter. Okay, and again it is flanked by LOXP sites. A second plasmid encoding Cre recombinase was also introduced. So now we are doing the LOXCRE activity over here. So Cre recombinase activity resulted in recombination between LOXP sites and the myostatin inactivator gene is incorporated in Y chromosome. So this is how it would look like. So you have this already in the cell, okay? And this is the plasmid that you are going to introduce with another plasmid having Cre recombinase, such that what you are going to do is you are going to introduce these genes now into this position. Okay, and this recombination is brought about by Cre recombinase at the LOXP sites. Okay, so they are the same direction facing LOXP sites. So as it is, the recombination will take place and the genes are going to be inserted at those sites. So the exchange of myostatin inactivator sequence for selectable marker cassette was initially selected by resistance to ganciclovir and indicating loss of TKG. So now you can check that जो भी selectable marker का property था वो अभी अगर इन्होंने खो दिया है तो it's an indication that recombination properly हुआ और तुम्हारा gene of interest वहां पर deliver हो गया है. ये तुम PCR से भी confirm कर सकते हो क्योंकि पहले हमने उन एम्ब्रियोनिक स्टेम सेल्स में सिलेक्टेबल मार्कर्स इनकॉर्पोरेट किए थे तो वो सिलेक्टेबल मार्कर के प्रॉपर्टीज दिखा पा रहे थे. लेकिन अगर उसी जगह पर अब हमने जीन इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया है तो सिलेक्टेबल मार्कर का प्रॉपर्टी अब वहां से गुल हो जाएगा. So the transfected embryonic stem cells carrying this myostatin activator gene were cultured, inserted into blastocyst and then implanted into pseudo-pregnant foster mothers. So what could they see? A single transgenic male founder mouse was obtained, which was then mated with non-transgenic females. Remember that this gene will express only in males because we have incorporated it into the Y chromosome. Okay, so all male offsprings henceforth will have the myostatin inactivator transgene, whereas none of the female offspring were expressing that transgene. So myostatin inactivator was expressed in skeletal muscle tissue because it was kept under the promoter of a skeletal muscle, rat skeletal muscle promoter, and it is not being inhibited in the हार्ट और लिवर टिश्यू बिकॉज यहाँ पे अगर उसका इनहिबिशन हुआ तो ऑर्गेनिज्म ही मर जाएगा. वहां पे मसल ग्रोथ होना जरूरी है. So muscle mass was seen to be greater by 5 to 20% in transgenic males than in non-transgenic male control mice, suggesting that this approach may be practically feasible to increase the meat yield in the livestock. Larger offspring often lead to birthing difficulties for female animals. Therefore, it may be necessary to use promoters that can be controlled to delay expression of transgene until after birth. क्योंकि अगर बच्चा पेट में ही मसल मास बहुत गेन करने लगेगा तो obviously birthing difficulties आने वाले हैं. So if we have another approach wherein we just control the transgene such that its expression is delayed and we let it express the gene after birth, then that would be a much better alternative, such that the birthing difficulties can be avoided. Okay. Now, another thing that we are, okay, just give me a minute. I just want to ensure if I have missed some slide over here. I feel so I have missed something. Just give me a minute to check that. Okay. No, it seems to be fine. Let us start. So, the next thing that we are going to discuss is a diet which is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It has been said to be an best thing for preventing cancers, autoimmune disorders such as arthritis, and a variety of other diseases. Omega-3 fatty acids, they are long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is found mainly in the fish. Humans by themselves do not have the ability to produce these fatty acids, nor can the livestock animals do it on their own. Okay, so unfortunately, because livestock animals and their meat may be consumed, we are not gaining it from them too, because they themselves do not have it. Rather, they are acquired from a diet which includes fish meal, fish oil, flaxseed. So the tissues of livestock animals contain high levels of omega-6 fatty acids, largely because they are fed a grain diet rich in these fatty acids. So omega-3 ke jagah they have omega-6 fatty acids, which are more. And livestock, unfortunately, do not have the enzymes which will help them to convert the omega-6 fatty acids to omega-3 fatty acids. And let me tell you that the diet with high omega-6 content is not normally very good for your health, because it leads to variety of diseases including cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. So the diet should be rich in omega-3 and not in omega-6, because omega-6 could give rise to the health conditions. So which are omega-3 fatty acids? You have alpha-linolenic acid, you have icosapentaenoic acid, docosahexaenoic acid. While omega-6 fatty acids are linoleic acid and arachidonic acid. Now, one strategy to increase the omega-3 fatty acid content in the human diet is to produce pigs that synthesize omega-3 fatty acids. Now, let me tell you that the roundworm Sinorhabditis elegans, it produces an enzyme called as desaturase. Desaturase has the ability to convert omega-6 fatty acids to omega-3 fatty acids by introducing a double bond into that hydrocarbon. Okay, so they have this ability wherein they can actually convert omega-6 fatty acids into omega-3 fatty acids by just introducing a double bond into that hydrocarbon. Now, if we transfer this gene to mice, they also gain the ability to synthesize omega-3 fatty acids. So, सिर्फ ये gene देने की कमी. So, an optimized version of FAT1 gene, wherein codon was slightly modified, was cloned into an expression vector under the control of chicken beta-actin promoter and cytomegalovirus enhancer, and was used to transfect the fetal pig fibroblast. Now, the cultured cells were seen to produce very high levels of omega-3 fatty acid and very low levels of omega-6 fatty acids. Okay, so here the FAT1 transgenic pigs which were produced were showing you threefold higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and 23% lower levels of omega-6 fatty acids as compared to their non-transgenic counterparts. This indicates that FAT1 desaturase is being expressed effectively, and it is converting all omega-6 fatty acids into omega-3 fatty acids, thereby protecting the pig from any kind of disorders, which is really great. Now, transgenesis is also being used to address certain environmental concerns. For example, a major ecological problem with the mass domestication or rearing of pigs and poultry is monogastric organism. That is, the monogastric organism is the overabundance of phosphorus in their fecal matter. All these organisms, pigs, poultry-based organisms, they give out a lot of phosphorus in their fecal matter. And this phosphorus from pig and poultry manure, it is stored outdoors or used as fertilizer, can run off into water streams. And if they go into the water streams, you very well know what is going to happen when phosphorus content increases in water. Eutrophication, algal blooms, excessive growth of cyanobacteria and algal population, which can deplete oxygen supply, kill the marine flora or the aquatic flora and fauna, and that water body becomes a dead water body. It's an environmental disaster. In addition, large amounts of phosphorus in the environment are also implicated in production of gases that can enhance greenhouse effect and lead to global warming, even more worse. So though this phosphorus can act as fertilizer, but it also has a lot of ecological challenges that it can give rise to. So can we deal with this issue by a transgenic approach? So pigs and poultry excrete large amounts of phosphorus because unlike ruminants, they are unable to digest and utilize phytic acid, also called as phytate, which is myoinositol 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hexacase dehydrogen orthophosphate or phytic acid as it is commonly called. It's the predominant storage form of phosphorus in plant-based animal feed. Okay, so plant-based foodstuff always has an excessive amount of phytic acid. But pigs and poultry find it very difficult to utilize this phytic acid. So, for example, the main food source for pigs is soybean meal, which has about 50% or more of its phosphate in the form of phytate. And the inability of the pigs to catabolize phytate is because they do not have an enzyme called as phytase, which is normally seen in plants and in microorganisms. Phytases, they remove successive phosphates from phytic acid to produce inositol 2 monophosphate or just inositol. They go on removing all the phosphate groups from the compound of phytic acid and just leave it to inositol monophosphate or just inositol. So phytase has been added to animal feed such that it facilitates the dietary uptake of phosphorus and lowers the phosphorus content of the excreta. However, adding the enzyme as a supplement into the feed becomes very expensive. And moreover, this approach may also be inefficient because when you process the feed, prepare it or store it, this enzyme eventually loses its activity. So the whole purpose of doing this is destroyed. So एक तो ये एक्सपेंसिव है और उसके ऊपर से अगर ये अप्रोच भी इनएफिशिएंट रहा तो फिर फायदा ही क्या होगा? So that is the reason why there is a need for alternative approaches to solve this specific issue that we have in terms of phosphorus utilization. So what could be the alternative strategy for the same? So if you see the image that is there on the screen, it shows you the molecular structures of inositol. Sorry, the first one, the A1 is phytic acid. You can see that in phytic acid, how many phosphate groups you have? 6 phosphate groups. That's the reason why we say that it's the best storage form of phosphorus in plant. It stores so many phosphate groups in it. But if you're not able to harvest it, then what's the use, right? B is inositol 2 monophosphate and 3 is just inositol. So phytase can actually harvest all phosphate groups from phytic acid and convert it into either B or C, that is inositol 2 monophosphate or just inositol. So this is possible only when you have the phytase enzyme. So what are some of the alternative strategies? You can have a transgenic pig. This transgenic pig should be able to express a phytase gene in their salivary glands such that whatever is the nutritional and pollution based consequences of phytate that could be dealt with. So a pro-nuclear embryo micro-injection has to be used to introduce this transgene into the pigs, okay, which has phytase gene APPA from E. coli under the control of parotid secretory promoter. Okay, so this parotid secretory protein promoter, parotid is a gland which is a part of salivary glands. So you're seeing to it that this is going to be expressed in the salivary glands itself. Okay, so such phytase producing transgenic pigs, when they were tested for growth and phosphorus excretion, when soybean meal was given to them, it was seen that soybean meal normally has 53% of total phosphorus as phytic acid. So it was seen that almost all of the phytate content was totally digested, and the fecal phosphorus content was reduced up to 75% as compared to the non-transgenic pig. So अगर सलाइवा में ही फाइटेज आ गया तो वहीं से उसका डाइजेशन चालू हो जाएगा, and most of the phytate will be digested and the phosphorus content which is normally seen in the excreta is reduced. And moreover, no adverse effect was also noted in these transgenic pigs, which is the best part. Tissues from the pigs that are utilized as meat for human consumption also contain only trace amounts of recombinant protein and have essentially the same composition as meat from non-transgenic pigs. So that is also sorted कि उसमें उस meat में इतना recombinant protein होगा नहीं, and its composition is also very similar to how it is in non-transgenic pigs. EnviroPig, as it is aptly called, is currently under evaluation by the US FDA for approval for commercialization. So this pig, which expresses the phytase gene, has been named as EnviroPig because it is solving an environmental challenge. Okay, so that is about transgenic livestock. Now we are left with transgenic poultry and transgenic fish, which we will be covering on Tuesday. So that we should be finishing off this first unit. We have one more unit to go in this elective paper. So we will be marking the end of this particular unit and we can start with the next unit. But we will not start the poultry part today because I have some exam duties to fulfill today at Ruya. So we will stop here for today and we will continue our discussion on Tuesday. Tomorrow we are meeting for our core session on bioremediation, but elective part we will continue in the next. Okay. The PPT till this part of livestock will be put on Wiki. I will put the Wiki link in classroom, and also the recording for the same has been put up on that Wiki, so you can refer to that also. Okay. Thank you so much, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir.